Zurich, winter of 1913. Dr. Carl Jung examines the intricate drawing his patient has created during their session. The woman, suffering from what doctors called dementia praecox, had sketched perfect circular patterns, mandalas she called them, sacred geometries that emerged from her visions. The impossible part, these designs matched architectural principles found in Tibetan monasteries she'd never visited, in cultures she'd never studied, in texts she'd never read. Jung was witnessing the first evidence of what would become psychology's most controversial discovery. Individual minds were accessing patterns that seemed to belong to all of humanity. 2,500 years earlier, beneath the Bodhi tree at Bodh Gaya, Buddha had made an even more startling discovery about these same universal patterns. They are fundamentally empty. Here lies one of the most profound questions in human understanding. Are these shared patterns evidence of a universal ground of mind, or proof that even our deepest universals are illusions? Hello, I'm Peter from Buddha's Wisdom. Today we venture into territory that challenges everything we believe about the nature of consciousness itself. Picture 2 moments of awakening separated by millennia. Buddha beneath the Bodhi tree at Bodh Gaya in 485 BCE. The night air still around him, his breath steadying into profound stillness. As dawn approached, he saw through the web of dependent origination. How all phenomena arise without independent essence, including the very patterns that seem most universal and eternal. Jung in his candlelit study in Küsnacht, 1913, surrounded by patient files and leather-bound volumes of ancient texts, discovering archetypal forms that connect all human minds across time and culture. Patterns so fundamental they appear in the dreams of patients and the myths of civilizations that never met. Both men encountered the deepest layers of consciousness. Both discovered that individual awareness extends far beyond what we imagine. In our previous exploration of Jung and Buddha's views on self versus no self, we examined how these giants approached individual identity. Today, we venture into even deeper territory, the realm where personal consciousness dissolves into something far more vast and mysterious. We'll follow Jung's descent into what he called the collective unconscious, Buddha's penetrating insight into the emptiness of all phenomena. When these discoveries collide, they reveal something that transforms our understanding of reality itself. This isn't mere philosophical speculation. Understanding these insights changes how we experience our daily lives, our relationships, our deepest sense of who we are. Let us begin with Jung's terrifying journey into the depths. The year 1913 marked the beginning of what Jung would later call his confrontation with the unconscious. His professional break with Freud had left him isolated in ways that went beyond mere academic disagreement. What followed was a descent into psychological territories that nearly destroyed him and revolutionized our understanding of the human psyche. The leather-bound red book sits open on Jung's desk, its pages filled with strange imagery and cryptic text written in his own hand. Jung had begun experiencing visions that filled him with dread. In his notebooks, he later reflected on words to the effect that he feared he was menaced by a psychosis. Ancient figures appeared to him in waking visions. A wise old man named Philemon, serpents and mystical symbols that seemed to emerge from realms beyond his personal experience. The darkness of these encounters terrified him. His patients were revealing something equally disturbing. A schizophrenic man described seeing the sun's phallus creating wind, an image Jung had never encountered. Years later, Jung discovered this exact symbol in the Mithraic liturgy, an ancient mystery text from the Roman Empire. The patient had never studied classical antiquity. How could his diseased mind access such obscure religious imagery? Another case haunted Jung's practice. A young woman, educated and rational, began drawing intricate circular patterns during her therapy sessions. Night after night, mandalas appeared in her dreams, sacred circles following architectural principles found in Tibetan monasteries and Hindu temples. She possessed no knowledge of Eastern spirituality. Case after case revealed the same impossible pattern. A businessman dreamed of descending into an underworld guided by a wise elder, echoing hero myths found across unconnected cultures. A housewife experienced visions of a divine mother figure, paralleling goddess imagery from civilizations separated by oceans and centuries. Jung wrote in his journal with growing amazement, "I had to accept that there were things in the psyche which I do not produce, which produce themselves and have their own life." This led to one of psychology's most revolutionary insights. Jung realized that beneath our personal unconscious, our individual memories, traumas, and complexes, lies something far more profound. A deeper layer of psyche shared by all humanity. Jung called this the collective unconscious. It contains what he termed archetypes, universal patterns of human experience that manifest across cultures throughout history. The hero, who embarks on a transformative quest. The great mother who nurtures and protects. The shadow that embodies our rejected aspects. The wise old man who offers guidance in times of crisis. As Jung wrote in his collected works, the collective unconscious contains the whole spiritual heritage of mankind's evolution, born anew in the brain structure of every individual. These archetypes aren't learned through culture or education. They emerge spontaneously in dreams, myths, religious visions, and artistic creations. They represent the deepest structural elements of human consciousness. Patterns so fundamental, they shape how we perceive and respond to life itself. Jung's realization filled him with both terror and wonder. Individual consciousness floats like a small boat on a vast ocean of shared psychic content. Our personal thoughts, dreams, and experiences draw from wellsprings that connect us to every human who has ever lived. If even these universal patterns exist, are they solid foundations or illusions in disguise? Bodh Gaya, 485 BCE. The night air hangs perfectly still around the fig tree where Prince Siddhartha sits in deepest meditation. Stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns as his awareness penetrates layer after layer of consciousness. This is the night that would change human understanding forever. The demons came first. Mara the tempter appeared with his armies. Seductive daughters offering pleasure, terrifying warriors brandishing weapons, voices whispering that he should abandon this impossible quest. A moment of perfect silence. With one hand, Siddhartha touched the earth, and the earth itself thundered in response, bearing witness to his right to sit beneath this tree. The demons dissolved like morning mist. As dawn approached, Buddha's meditation revealed something that challenged every spiritual assumption of his time. He saw his own past lives stretching back through countless rebirths. He witnessed the karmic patterns connecting all beings across time. He perceived the 12 links of dependent origination. How all phenomena arise through interconnected causes and conditions. His most radical discovery concerned the very nature of these universal patterns themselves. In the luminous clarity of that meditation, Buddha saw that even the deepest truths, the most fundamental patterns of existence, lack what philosophers call inherent existence. They arise, persist, and dissolve based on causes and conditions. They have no independent, eternal essence. This insight became known as śūnyatā, emptiness, not the emptiness of a vacant room, the emptiness of inherent existence. All phenomena, Thoughts, emotions, sensations, concepts, even spiritual realizations appear like reflections on water, present yet without solid substance. Centuries later, the Heart Sutra would crystallize this insight. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. The very patterns that seem most solid and universal reveal themselves as transparent, interdependent processes. Consider how Buddha understood consciousness itself. Unlike the Vedic traditions that viewed awareness as eternal and unchanging, Buddha saw consciousness as arising moment by moment. Each moment of awareness emerges through the meeting of sense organs with their objects. Even our deepest meditative states, our most profound spiritual insights, emerge through causes and conditions. This teaching struck at the heart of the spiritual establishment of his time. The Brahmanical tradition taught the existence of an eternal, unchanging soul called Atman. Buddha's direct experience revealed something far more subtle, a flowing process with no fixed center, patterns arising and dissolving without a permanent ground. Buddha's insight into emptiness wasn't philosophical speculation. It emerged from the profound stillness of deep meditation, where all conceptual frameworks dissolve and reality reveals its naked nature. In that state of pristine awareness, Buddha saw that even the path to enlightenment, even the Dharma teachings themselves, are skillful means rather than ultimate truths. As recorded in the Alaggadupama Sutta, Buddha declared, "My teaching is like a raft. When you have crossed the river, you should let it go." The Buddha's teaching from the Dhammapada states, all conditioned things are impermanent. All conditioned things are subject to suffering. All things are without self. This final insight, the teaching of no self, extends to the deepest levels of reality. Even universal truths, cosmic principles, and archetypal patterns are without permanent essence. What makes this discovery so radical is that emptiness doesn't negate the appearance of phenomena. It reveals their true nature. Mountains still rise. Rivers still flow. Visions still unfold. They do so without the solid, independent existence we usually attribute to them. Buddha's teaching of emptiness became the foundation of compassion itself. When we truly see that all beings and phenomena lack separate existence, the barriers between self and other naturally dissolve. We recognize our fundamental interconnection while simultaneously seeing through any fixed notion of that very connection. If even Dharma is a raft, what about Jung's archetypes? By 1930, Carl Jung had become one of Europe's most celebrated psychologists. His mornings followed an unusual ritual that baffled his colleagues. Before seeing patients, Jung would spend hours in his private library, studying Sanskrit texts, Buddhist sutras, and Tibetan manuscripts. His collection in Küsnacht had grown to contain some of the most comprehensive Eastern wisdom literature in the Western world. Jung's fascination with Buddhism wasn't merely academic curiosity. Through his friendship with Richard Wilhelm, the renowned sinologist, he gained access to teachings that seemed to illuminate his psychological discoveries from an entirely different angle. Jung wrote to Wilhelm, "The East has taught me another, wider, more profound and higher understanding." As Jung delved deeper into Buddhist philosophy, he encountered concepts that resonated with his own insights. Some scholars have compared Jung's collective unconscious with Buddhism's alaya vijnana, the storehouse consciousness described in Yogacara philosophy. These concepts emerge from very different traditions and serve distinct purposes. The collective unconscious represents Jung's discovery of shared psychological patterns. The alaya vijnana describes Buddhism's understanding of how karmic seeds perpetuate the cycle of rebirth. The approaches differ fundamentally. Jung was mapping universal psychological content, the archetypal patterns that structure human experience. Buddhism investigated the processes by which consciousness perpetuates illusion. Jung studied the contents of consciousness. Buddhism examined how those very contents arise and dissolve. Jung found himself particularly drawn to Tibetan Buddhism's sophisticated understanding of consciousness. The Tibetan teachings described multiple levels of awareness, subtle mental factors, and the interdependent arising of all psychological phenomena. In his commentary on the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Jung observed, "The transformation processes that we can observe in the practices of Indian and Chinese yoga and in the meditations of Buddhism are genuine experiences that happen to human beings." As Jung's understanding deepened, something unexpected began occurring. The more he explored Eastern wisdom, the more he questioned the ultimate reality of his own psychological categories. Jung's private notebooks from this period reveal a man wrestling with profound questions. If individual consciousness is constructed and personal identity is fluid, what about the archetypal patterns he had discovered? In 1944, following a heart attack, Jung experienced what he called a vision of cosmic proportions. He described Earth as a globe of ineffable beauty, suspended in dark space, a perspective that seemed to confirm the provisional nature of all psychological constructs. In his later writings, he suggested the collective unconscious might be a conceptual tool rather than ultimate reality. This admission marks a crucial turning point. Jung had begun to approach what Buddha taught as śūnyatā, the recognition that even our deepest insights into reality might be empty of the solid existence we attribute to them. This created a fascinating paradox. Jung's method focused on mapping the universal content of human consciousness: the hero, the mother, the shadow, the wise old man. Buddha's insight pointed to the emptiness of all content, no matter how universal or archetypal. Jung was discovering the patterns that connect all minds. Buddha was revealing that even those patterns arise through interdependent causation, without inherent existence. One path mapped the architecture of consciousness. The other revealed the open space in which all structures appear and dissolve. Both traditions arrived at remarkably similar, practical outcomes. Jung's individuation process guides people beyond rigid ego identification toward psychological wholeness. Buddhist practice leads to liberation from the illusion of separate self. Both paths dissolve the boundaries of ordinary identity, revealing something far more vast and open. In his final years, Jung seemed to sense this convergence. He wrote, "The goal of Eastern religious practice is the same as that of Western psychology, the shifting of the center of gravity from the ego to the self. If both paths dissolve identity, what happens when they converge?" In research laboratories worldwide, neuroscientists have discovered something remarkable about how consciousness operates. The brain, they suggest, is less a camera recording reality and more a storyteller dreaming the world into being. This discovery offers glimpses of Jung's collective unconscious operating at the level of neural circuitry. Shared patterns emerge because human brains share similar architecture. Neuroscience provides clues about the biological basis of archetypal experiences. It cannot cross into the direct recognition of emptiness that Buddha discovered in meditation. This limitation points to something crucial. Jung's psychological investigations and Buddha's contemplative insights operate in different domains. Jung was mapping the contents of consciousness, the universal patterns, symbols, and processes that structure human experience. Buddha was pointing to the nature of consciousness itself, its fundamental emptiness of inherent existence. Contemporary therapeutic practice demonstrates this integration beautifully. Jungian analysts work with archetypal material, helping clients recognize universal patterns in their personal experiences. When combined with Buddhist mindfulness practices, something remarkable occurs. clients learn to engage with archetypal energies without identifying rigidly with them. A therapist described one breakthrough. Michael spent months exploring his inner warrior archetype, understanding how this pattern drove his competitive business approach. Through mindfulness practice, he began to see the warrior not as a fixed part of his identity, rather as energy that could arise and serve its purpose without overwhelming his entire personality. This freed him from both suppressing his assertiveness and being consumed by destructive aggression. Perhaps you've experienced this yourself. Have you noticed certain patterns, certain roles or energies that seem to appear in your relationships or work life? The mother, the rebel, the perfectionist, the dreamer? Jung would say these aren't accidents, they're expressions of deeper archetypal energies. Buddha would add, they're also not ultimately who you are. This represents the practical synthesis of Jung's and Buddha's insights. We can work skillfully with universal patterns while holding them lightly. We can recognize archetypal energies without solidifying them into permanent psychological structures. The integration reveals something transformative. Jung discovered the shared patterns that connect all minds. Buddha taught that even these patterns are like waves on an ocean, arising through interdependent causes, serving essential functions, then dissolving when their purpose is complete. Together, these insights point to a reality that transcends both connection and separation. We are deeply interconnected through what Jung called the collective unconscious. That very interconnection is empty of the permanent, independent existence we usually attribute to it. Today, we see this integration everywhere, from the epics of the Mahabharata and the Odyssey to modern blockbusters like the Marvel Universe. Humanity keeps retelling the same archetypal stories. They evolve, die, and are reborn, reminders that even our most universal myths are subject to change. Social media connects us through shared symbols and collective emotions, yet these viral patterns arise and disappear like shadows on a wall. Climate change confronts us with impermanence on a planetary scale, revealing how even our most solid assumptions about reality can dissolve. Jung's late writings hint at this recognition. The deeper we penetrate into the psyche, the more we realize that individual and universal, personal and archetypal, are perspectives on the same underlying mystery. Buddha expressed this same understanding. The universal patterns Jung discovered are neither solid nor non-existent. They are interdependent appearances, arising in the space of awareness itself. Both Jung and Buddha ultimately point beyond their own conceptual frameworks towards something that can only be directly realized. Jung called it the transcendent function. Buddha pointed to it as the Dharmadhatu, the expanse of reality beyond all conceptual categories. What emerges when archetypal patterns reveal their essential transparency? We began with Jung's discovery of the collective unconscious, universal patterns connecting all minds across time and culture. We explored Buddha's insight into śūnyatā, the emptiness of all phenomena, including the very patterns Jung had mapped. The synthesis reveals something that changes everything. We are connected through universal stories that unfold across time, arising through interdependent causes, serving their function, dissolving when their purpose is complete. Jung found evidence of a deeper layer of consciousness that transcends individual identity. Buddha discovered that even this deeper layer arises through interdependent causation, without permanent essence. Together they point to a reality that embraces both profound connection and fundamental openness. This understanding liberates us from two extremes. We need not deny our deep connections to universal patterns and shared human experiences, nor must we cling to these patterns as ultimate realities. We can engage fully with the archetypal dimensions of existence while recognizing their transparent, interdependent nature. As we reach this synthesis, the deepest mystery of all emerges. If our individual minds are constructions, if even the collective unconscious is empty of solid existence, if universal patterns arise and dissolve like ripples dissolving on water, who or what is it that recognizes both the pattern and its emptiness? What is the nature of awareness itself, the consciousness that remains present, whether archetypal energies appear or dissolve? This question points beyond psychology and philosophy toward the most fundamental inquiry of human existence. Both Jung and Buddha left this mystery unresolved in their formal teachings. Their lives pointed toward its direct investigation. Perhaps the answer to our deepest questions about consciousness cannot be found in concepts or theories, only in the immediate recognition of awareness itself. Share your insights in the comments below. What resonated with you in this collision between Jung's collective unconscious and Buddha's teaching of emptiness? Have you experienced moments where universal patterns revealed their transparent nature? If this exploration expanded your understanding, please subscribe to join our ongoing investigation into consciousness and reality. Until then, remember, every story you live is both profoundly real and profoundly empty.